Well, it's only 4 hours from where we live to get over to Louisville.
Yeah.
So that's where we headed.
Mom takes her sons on the Bourbon Trail. Can't everybody have a mom like that
Exactly.
in America? You are the American mom everybody dreams of right there.
Welcome to another trip down the Bourbon Road with your hosts, Jim and Mike. So grab a glass of your favorite bourbon and kick back.
We would like to thank Tommy and Gwen Mitchell from Logheads Home Center for supporting this episode of the Bourbon Road. Find out more about their fine rustic furniture at logheadshomecenter.com.
Hey, this is Big Chief from the Bourbon Road, and I'm in Denison, Texas, visiting Ironroot Republic Distillery, and they definitely hit the ground running. Not that old of a distillery, and they actually won World Whiskey Awards from Whiskey Magazine Bourbon of the Year. Now that for 2020. Now that's some amazing stuff, and I've got Marsha, the mother of Texas whiskey, with me, and Robert Licorice, one of the founders and owners.
How's it going?
It's going.
It's going good, huh?
It is. We're about to drink some whiskey.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to be here with you guys. We like to get straight to the whiskey.
All right.
No doubt about it.
Let's do it.
And you got something in front of me. What do we got?
So that is going to be Harbinger 115. That is the one that won the award this year. It's our flagship whiskey. It was the very first whiskey we ever released. And it's our a bourbon. It's made from 3 different corns, Bloody Butcher corn, purple corn, a flint corn, and then a low rye, and then also some yellow corn in there too.
A lot of floral on that nose.
Yeah.
Now, how old is this?
So the youngest barrels in the blend are going to be 32 months with this one. The oldest ones are going to be just over 4 years old.
Now, our listeners are probably saying, man, that is a young whiskey, right?
It is a young whiskey. Oh, yeah.
It definitely doesn't look young. It's that dark amber color, that just the amber goodness, the American spirit in the glass. You're looking through it, a beautiful looking whiskey and stuff, but it's a Texas bourbon.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the Texas weather isn't shy, and so that color comes out pretty darn quickly around here.
So you ever heard that song, Chris Ledoux, this cowboy hat? You ever heard that song?
I don't think so.
You should listen to that hat, because I said I wrote a blog yesterday and I said Texas whiskey, they should have a sequel to that song just about Texas whiskey, because he says I roped a white northern or a Texas tornado or something in that song, and I think Texas distillers have harnessed and tamed that Texas heat to make some whiskey.
That's the goal. That's the goal. Difficult part of making whiskey here, but it's also what makes it so much fun.
So this is a young whiskey. I don't get a whole lot of alcohol just punching me in the nose. I get some vanillas, that floral I was talking about, maybe some like peach in there a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we tend to see a lot of peach, apricot, those type of
orange
nuts.
marmalade.
Yeah,
orange marmalade. Now that I could get with that.
Yeah.
All right, let's
some nice baking spices with it.
Let's taste this sucker. Oh, that's nice.
That pot still distillation that just coats that tongue and really gives you kind of a flavor all throughout from the beginning to the end.
Yeah, it's got a nice finish on it. The taste, though, is just, to me, is amazing. A little bit of cinnamon candy with that.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to think of something else I've tasted before that maybe those just a little bit of pop rocks maybe there popping on the back end.
Mm-hmm.
We like to say that it's brunch. You get a lot of those, a little bit of that, some molasses, the pancakes, then with that orange marmalade and the light fruit with it, it's kind of a...
Man, you're making us sound good.
It does.
It's like she's a professional over there.
Well, that was we'd had breakfast with Peggy Nell Stevens, and we paired some whiskeys with breakfast with her one time, and that was one of the best interviews I'd ever done before with her. It was amazing to sit down and listen to her pair foods, and to hear people say you can drink a bourbon or a whiskey with brunch. There's nothing wrong with that. Mm-hmm. That's one of my favorite things, to make a bourbon mimosa.
Oh, heck yes. Now you got me thirsty over here.
I don't know. We've done some breakfast old fashions with a little bit of bacon and maybe one of those little
Eggo
waffles with the cinnamon on them as the.
You had a little bit of candied bacon.
Yeah, candied bacon.
That's good right there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Best part of waking up.
So what year was Ironroot founded?
So we started distilling 2014. Before that, we took probably a good 4 or 5 years of just kind of studying and research, just because both my brother, myself, and my mother did not come from any sort of beverage making background, distilling, wine, beer, or otherwise. So when we first decided this was kind of the thing that inspired us to go in a direction, start our own business, we knew we needed to take the time to really learn what the heck we were supposed to be doing. And so we kind of tried to find out people who we thought were doing a really great job. I mean, that's how we ended up talking with the guys down in Waco, down at Balcones. It's how we ran into Bear and Nancy Fraley. And that's then that led to the French connection and the inspiration of how they do stuff in France and kind of how to use what they do here in Texas, again, to help tame the Texas weather.
And that's why we always say that it's fate that brought us to Denison, because it is that relationship with cognac that was developed because of the history of Denison and a lot of the techniques that we use to harness this Texas heat come from a lot of the techniques that we've learned through them. So it's been we think we belong here.
Now Rob, you didn't start out in whiskey. You said, you and your brother started out doing stuff. And what's your background?
So I graduated from undergrad in economics in Sherman, Texas, just right next door to here. From there, went to law school in St. Louis, and I graduated from law school, got my JD, but never took the bar exam. Immediately went from graduating law school to the Bourbon Trail with my mom to go learn about distilling.
Your mom took you on the Bourbon Trail.
Oh, my mom took me on the Bourbon Trail.
It's only 4 hours from where we live to get over to Louisville.
Yeah.
So that's where we headed.
Mom takes her sons on the Bourbon Trail. Can't everybody have a mom like that?
Exactly.
In America? You are the American mom everybody dreams of right there.
Jonathan didn't get to go. He has a little bit different background. He's a industrial engineer. He has a master's in biomedical engineering. So he really had a real job over in Fort Worth. He was designing saw blades.
Out the Bourbon Trail.
Yeah, for neurosurgery. And he was, so when once we got into it, he said, I'm not working over here in a cubicle. We're all going to do this together. And so we all took the leap of faith.
Now, could you ever imagine, Marsha, is whenever you're raising your two sons, that you guys were going to own a distillery together?
I didn't even know what a distillery was. I mean, I grew up in Montana, and
they drink plenty of whiskey in Montana.
But they didn't make a lot of it back then. They've got some good distilleries now, but back then there was nothing. Usually, I think we had more Canadian whiskey coming over from the border than we did anything else. But we actually discovered this on a family reunion up in Washington State, and we visited our first distillery, and that was the first point where we thought, "Oh, we could do this."
It was in a shopping center next to a Thai food restaurant that we were eating.
Do you remember that distillery?
Oh yeah, it was Dry Fly Distilling.
Dry Fly Distillery. Oh. So did you notice? You probably don't keep up with Instagram or anything, but my post today was about Dry Fly, and our episode that we released today was about Dry Fly.
Yeah, see, look at how things interconnect.
It does.
They went up there and spent
07 or 08. I want to say
they went up there and actually did
right
their first internship was with Dry Fly.
Mm-hmm. I love that. See, everything ties. Our whiskey culture and community is more tight knit than most people realize.
That's exactly right.
It's a small world,
and they're doing great up there still. So that's wonderful.
So you're out in Montana, you raise your boys, and you get them off to college. One's got his job, the other one you're taking around on the old Bourbon Trail there, just getting him boozed up on whiskey.
That's right.
Not the not the Leave It to Beaver family though.
No.
I was going to say they are the Beaver Boys, but they're like straight off that show. You got the clean cut looking.
This is just for you. This haircut's just for you.
but not your typical American family dream right there. Let's open up.
When they first mentioned it, and you think you've got they both have real jobs we've gotten them through college. Life is good, and then at Christmas he sits down at the dinner table and tells us he's going to start a distillery, and everybody just kind of, after the initial, few minutes of trying to process what he just said, everybody kind of fell into it. And their dad had always teased them about wanting to. We had joked about it
since we had visited Dry Fly in like 2007. Like when we retired, that's what we were going to do, was start a distillery, because copper's kind of in our blood a little bit. Again, my parents are from Butte, Montana, which is the home of the Copper Kings and all that.
Copper country,
Oh, yeah. And so there's just something that was so primal when we saw the copper stills, because we'd been to wineries, been to breweries.
We're still in the metals business. Their dad's been in the metals business for 50 years. He's been in copper
forever. But it's just something about the warmth of copper that really kind of, we're like, you know what, that's what we're going to do when we retire. But I graduated and was like, nope, let's do it now.
So is there a possibility there's some of the copper that he's mined or that went through his hands?
I mean, it probably was used long ago. But
who would know? He does.
That'd be a question more for Vendome, I think.
I guess. I don't know where they get their copper.
I could definitely find out. I know a person at Vendome. I'm going to have to ask her. So Gina, if you're listening to this episode, I need to know where they got their copper for their steel at. So
there's only so many copper mines, and you know what? It's a tight knit community in the mining business, just like the distilling business. You know, most everybody after his 50 years, right?
Yeah, I would think that'd be true. Me and my wife actually about a year ago, we stayed up in the UP of Michigan, and a lot of copper up there, the hotel we were built was on an old copper mine, on top of an old copper mine. And I could barely sleep at night because I thought, I just know that this whole entire hotel and the floors were leaning in it, because you're in the UP of Michigan. And I just knew the whole thing was just going to fall down inside that mine in the middle of the night. So I didn't sleep very well.
Just heard the creaking. I'm like, oh boy.
So we got this and down it. I can see definitely why it won Bourbon of the Year. It is just creamy, velvety. I actually, on the couple of sips after the first one, I got a little bit of almost like a spicy butterscotch to that. Not Werther's candy, but just that old butterscotch. I'd love that taste. Very good.
Thank you very much. Yeah, no, I think we can contribute a lot of that type of flavor profile comes from, again, the barrels. Those wave stave casks have that kind of smokiness, but this particularly just that butterscotch note that you're talking about, like it's really, really ramped up in those wave stave casks.
And the purple corn is such a great partner with the European oak to pull in those some of those cloves and that cinnamon and the baking spices you get in it.
Yeah, I can see why everybody loves it and why everybody's craving it. You know, we actually stopped at a liquor store here before, and the only thing I could see on the shelf was one little lonely bottle. And I was like, but there's, I think they had 4 or 5 different places for your guys' product there, but everything was gone.
It's the wonderful and terrible thing about awards. Again, for us, a huge blessing. I mean, it's, again, for us, especially during this time, it's been just huge for helping us get our whiskey out there and getting in the hands of people. But now it's tough to keep stuff on shelves because we're, again, as you saw, we're a small distillery. So now keeping everything stocked up is the challenge. So I think we've already this year bottled more than we did all of last year, which is crazy.
And you said you guys are only producing 250
barrels a year. Yeah.
And that's it.
Yep. We're working on making more. As you said, the back's getting kind of filled up. So we're working on getting the next barrel warehouse up and going, and then we'll be able to crank things up to a little bit different level. But
the stills, we have the capacity. We just the storage and balancing everything out when you're a small distillery is, when people say, well, why don't you have more? And I said, do you know when we created this whiskey, how old this distillery was? this was a 2-year-old distillery, and you don't even know what your whiskey's going to taste like. So you're going to be careful on how much you make there.
It is a balancing act, right?
It
Even
is.
for the giant guys.
Yeah.
You know, I think if they could looked back 10 years ago and said, there's going to be this bourbon boom or a whiskey boom, you don't think they wouldn't have put up double what they put up?
Yeah.
They sure would have. They'd have filled those coffers up, but they'd have been whiskey poor for a little bit. As some of our good friends have told us before, everybody thinks they're millionaires, but they're really just whiskey poor. They got a lot of liquid assets.
There's
That's exactly right.
A lot of warehouses out there.
So let's get into that second pour. What do you got for us for the second pour?
Second one, I'm going to do, so for the second segment, I'm going to do the Bloody Butcher corn versus the purple corn. So I think the other one is going to be one of our other mash bills is a low rye mash bill. So this is going to be the more traditional mash bill. But you'll see even the way that we make it, it doesn't quite really have a traditional Kentucky profile.
Let's do it.
I was just going to say, you didn't do Promethean?
Oh. Yeah, we could grab Promethean.
Because Promethean, I really like to pair, actually, my choice is to pair the Promethean with the Harbinger. And the reason why I like to pair it that way is because the Promethean is really the inverse of the Harbinger, where we have our 4 primary mash bills: the purple corn, the Bloody Butcher corn, the red flint corn, and the rye, where we showcase the flavors of the purple and the Bloody Butcher and the Harbinger. On the flip side, Promethean goes, we feature the flint corn and the rye. So you're going to get the flavor profile. You'll be surprised. And this is where you can really showcase and understand what 5% difference in some of these mash bill with these heirloom corns can do, because this one to us goes more to the darker fruit and the dark tea. You're going to get a little a totally different finish with it. This is the brand new one we just actually bottled Saturday, and it is at a nice 100 proof.
So yeah, traditionally we had bottled it at 103, but we made a decision about a year ago that we wanted Promethean to become a bottled in bond. And that means we got to bottle it at 100 proof. So we've raised the age statement, moved it to 100 proof, and
now
we're going to slowly march to that 4-year age statement to become the bottled in bond.
Mm-hmm.
So you got 2 different bottle styles here. Walk me through that real fast. Of how did you go from that?
I can tell you that the original bottle is the horseshoe shape, and we really enjoyed that. When we started with it, they came out of China, and then we had 2 reasons for changing. One was the fact that when we realized when it goes into on premise or at bars, it's a little tippier. It's a little bit harder to deal with. It's got a short neck. It also, when they turn it sideways, you have no branding on it at all. The second reason was that with the new tariffs, it went from a 30% increase to, I think it's a 285 or 89% increase on the glass. And we'd rather drink our whiskey than look at the bottle.
So it was going to change the price point. So by the time it got to shelf, the price would be $15 more a bottle. And that was not something we wanted to do. When you and I were talking earlier, I have a very strong belief in different price points on whiskey and that I want to be able to afford my own whiskey. And so for me, keeping our price point was more important than keeping the old bottle shape.
There's going to be some really nice upgrades on the labeling that will be coming, probably out by the fall, I think. We're just waiting to get everything finalized on the label approvals and things. So there'll be another change in the labels, which I think everybody will appreciate too.
These are holding pattern labels right now.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to kick that can down the road a little bit to get where you're going. And I still think the new bottle is super beautiful. To me, that's what I could imagine John Wayne carrying around. I mean,
it fits in a holster pretty well.
Does it? Is that what you do? Walk around your house with those?
That's right.
Those on stuff. No wonder you're not married yet. So cheers. Let's taste this thing. Man, I get some dark dark, rich toffee in that. Almost whenever you walk up to a kettle corn, smell that kettle corn cook.
Sometimes you get a nice light chocolate. Get a little bit of cinnamon with it.
Maybe some toffee. That's a little bit lighter than the last one, but more rich. I get a little bit more of the oak out of that one. I do get that chocolate taste, maybe more of a baker's chocolate. That not bitter, but and some of our listeners might. It's not you get candy bar. No. Candy bar is super sweet, but baker's chocolate is just raw chocolate. It's good. I used to eat my mom's all the time. She'd be like, "Where's that chocolate at?" I ate it. Just took a whole big old chunk off of there.
Said chocolate, right?
Is that what you did as a kid? No,
I steal a lot of other stuff out of the pantry, though. I was always stealing food out of the pantry.
Yeah. Robert wasn't as big on the sweets.
No.
It's still the macaroni. That's more of what I always go after.
My dad had the chocolate. And whenever you went to visit him, he always had a can, and in it he'd have the chocolate. And that was kind of the treat when you got to go to his work and you'd find the can of chocolate.
I just get so much out of this. I get the vanillas and the caramels, everything it's very complex and layered. I think the longer it's in my glass, the more it opens up and the more I'm going to get out of it, especially for 100 proof. Usually you would say that out of something that's 120, 130. But this is that. I'm just amazed when I look at these colors, because whenever I see a Kentucky bourbon or a Tennessee whiskey, to get this color, you would have a 9-year-old or up to a 12-year-old whiskey. Sometimes even older than that, 15 to 20 years old is not even as dark as this.
Yeah, you get really deep into the wood. And again, it's that Texas weather. I think we always get asked, what is the Texas profile? And it's a really hard thing to nail down, just because there's so many different things being done in Texas, different styles of whiskey being done. But I think that with the weather and the intensity, you do get this really deep density of flavor that you typically get just because you're getting so deep into that wood. I think that's one commonality I see. Again, with Balcones, Garrison, what we do, that it is a very dense flavor profile typically. So even at lower proofs.
I think Texas has got it going on right now. If people aren't down here trying to buy the whiskey, if you're not trying to find it on the shelf, if you're not searching it out, probably something I think that you should have on your shelf. I really can't get enough of it at my house. I'm just like trying to seek it out. And in Kentucky, your guys' bottles are on the shelf, but I don't see enough of them up there. And I'm sure that's a growing thing. And eventually I think you'll be all the way around in the United States and hopefully overseas.
We're working on it. Working on it. So yeah, right now we're in about 35 states. Again, with Total Wine, we're anywhere you can get their stuff. You can find a couple of our bottlings. Right now we've only got 2 that go nationwide. The rest of the stuff is Texas only for the moment. Again, I think that's one thing, again, with the smaller distilleries, it's just building up to where you can get that whiskey out there.
But you are nationwide.
We are, yeah, in about, I think it's 35 or 38 states. I forget. Total Wine was opening up some new states, I believe, this year. So, but I think it's 35 states right now.
And what about in military bases?
Military bases, right now we're in the Navy bases. So you can get Promethean, Hubris every once in a while at the military bases, naval bases for us. We do a lot of
the Harbinger 90.
Yeah, and we just got an order for the 115 proof Harbinger, so a few cases will be going out to the Navy bases of that one as well.
Well, that's nice to see that the military guys, me and Jim are both veterans. He's actually a Navy veteran, a submariner, and he'll be happy to hear that it's in Navy bases. The sailors actually can drink something besides rum. So I got to say, this is some excellent whiskey. How did you decide on Denison, Texas to put a distillery at?
So when we knew that we were going to come back, because Jonathan and I had both left Texas to go to grad school, and we knew he had come back to Fort Worth for a job, and his wife said, "You guys can do something this dumb as long as we were still in Texas. So we knew we were going to stay in Texas. At the time when we were looking at where distilleries were, there was a bunch down the hill country and not really any in north above Waco. And so we were like, you know what, let's start looking around North Texas and kind of see what there is to find out here. And a lot of the towns at the time were dry. They did not want distillery. You go in there and be like, hey, we want to put a distillery there. And they're like, next town over, sir. Not interested in hard liquor. And then we ran into Denison, and Denison was a town that they said, how can we get you here? We want you here. We see this as something that can add value to our community. And Denison actually has a history. So back in the late 1800s, a gentleman lived here named T.V. Munson. He was a viticulturist trying to figure out how to grow European grapes here in the U.S. And he was bringing French grapes over, but they'd plant them, and after a few years, they'd die off. And so we discovered we have all these plant diseases here they didn't have over in Europe. And so the European plants had no immunity to them, but the Texas grapes did. And so he found a particular Texas grape that was essentially immune to something specifically called phylloxera. And he started grafting the European grapes on top of a lot of the French grapes. And he was able to start growing them here. Well, around that same time, phylloxera got transferred from the U.S. over to Europe, and it decimated the French wine industry. About 80% of the French grapes were wiped out. So Cognac, Bordeaux, Burgundy, all those regions were just decimated. That's why Cognac fell out of favor and single malt whiskey became so popular, was because there literally wasn't Cognac to be made because the grapes had died off. And so the French freaked out. They started basically going all around the world trying to find solutions. And one of the solutions they found was through the Smithsonian, because this crazy guy in Denison, Texas, had been sending them all of his papers on this Texas grapefruit with the French vines attached to the top of it. Next thing you know, they're shipping the Texas grapevines over there. So even to this day, a large portion of the grapes around the world are grafted on top of descendants of this Texas grapefruit because it is so resistant. So that's where the Ironroot, it's the iron roots from Texas, the name comes from. For that reason, Cognac and Denison became sister cities. And for every few years, the mayor of Cognac and even some of the master Cognac distillers will come and visit. And so we've gotten to develop this really great relationship with a lot of the Cognac producers. Even enough so that in the last year, or I guess 2 years ago now, Marsha and I actually went over to Cognac. They put us up in one of the French chateaus. One of the producers put up in their big mansion. And then we got to tour around Cognac for a week. Just like, again, visiting all distilleries as they were doing all their distillation runs and going and tasting stuff off the still with them and talking about stuff. And then even one producer had me go out for a couple of days, and I went and ran his stills for a couple of days.
What did Marsha do in that time?
She was drinking and eating cheese and drinking wine and rum.
Is that what you were doing? A little bit of bread and cheese?
She told me she's not getting up at 5 a.m. on her vacation.
A lot of them are small distilleries. Actually, we spent a lot of time visiting and touring. We got to what do they call their cool bridges? Toner.
Tenorese or whatever it is. My French is failing me right now.
So we had a wonderful opportunity to go out to Vicard, and we then we had a friend that had moved and been distilling over there, and he had contacts, and we were invited to taste some of the oldest cognacs from some of the in some of the cellars that most people don't get to do. So we just had a phenomenal time over there, visiting and meeting some people and tasting things that were made.
We tasted some stuff from out of the 1800s.
Yes.
Again, they asked us if we want to do a decades tasting. So I was like, oh, yeah, 100%, maybe like 60s, 70s, 80s. No, it was 1880, 1819, and 1900, 1910, 1920, 1930. And then the last one they said was an interesting one because it was like 1941. It was
distilled when the Germans.
The Germans are the ones who harvested that.
Really?
And so it was really interesting that they were showing the differences of what they did and what the Germans did while they were there. but it was
the Germans do know how to make some wine.
Oh, they do.
They do.
So
some beer.
they were. I mean, it was successful. It did not taste bad, but it was one of those things that it just kind of puts the world in perspective. And talking with the cognac producers, I mean, they kind of have the opposite system in cognac, where there's 6,000 distilleries, but there's only about 150 brands, because the brands, they actually will contract out to all the small, craft producers. Even the big giant giant brands like Hennessy, they buy basically all their cognac from small farmers. And that's what they use to make so it's the big brands sourced from all the little guys there.
And Marcia, how did you feel pretty special to get to drink some of that stuff from the 1800s? And
it was so amazing. And it really puts in perspective what, there's a difference between a bourbon and a cognac. And a lot of it is, there's a lot of soft finesses and things that take that delicate time. Brandies, you have to treat them a little more delicately than you do the bourbons, I think. And so just it was amazing, the flavors and the depth of flavor.
You kind of said something I noticed, and some of our listeners might not understand the difference between cognac and brandy. So cognac is kind of like bourbon, where all cognac is brandy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
all brandy is cognac.
Not every brandy is a cognac. So
they're very strict on their rules.
Yeah. So all bourbon's whiskey, but not all whiskey's bourbon, right? So cognac's kind of that special.
Yeah, same. It's a special designation of brandy. Yeah, for sure.
Well, let's finish this, what we have in our glass up, and we'll take a break, and we'll come back from the second half, and we'll try 2 more expressions. Perfect. All right.
We would like to thank Tommy and Gwen Mitchell from Logheads Home Center for supporting this episode of the Bourbon Road. Logheads Home Center, nestled in the hills of Kentucky, is an industry leader in building handcrafted rustic furniture. Family owned and operated, they take pride in offering only the very best for their customers. The Logheads, and that's what they like to call themselves, are skilled woodcrafters who are passionate about creating rustic furniture for people who appreciate the beauty of natural wood. Owners Tommy and Gwen don't just sell the rustic lifestyle, they live it. And you can be sure that Logheads furniture will always be handcrafted in Kentucky by artisans who embrace the simple way of life. Logheads rustic furniture is made from northern white cedar, a sustainable wood that's naturally rot and termite resistant. Its beauty and quality will add warmth to your earthy lifestyle for generations to come. Be sure to check out everything they have to offer at logheadshomecenter.com. And while you're at it, give Tommy and Gwen a shout on Facebook or Instagram at Logheads Home Center.
Hey, so it's Big Chief. We're back here for our second half with Ironroot Republic Distillery. Rob, what's this third pour you got for me?
So the third pour we're doing, this is, now you've had kind of our standard products. I'm breaking it down into our different mash bills. So this one is our purple corn mash bill. It's in Euro oak. It's a 3-year-old, sitting right at cast strength, 121 proof on this guy.
It would be a single barrel.
Yeah, this one's a single barrel.
100% corn.
You ever had those redfish?
Oh, yeah.
Spicy redfish? I'm getting that on this. I was going to say Twizzler, but I get a little spice in there. So those redfish, I think, have a little spice to them. I don't know what those are called. I just call them redfish.
Swedish fish? Is that
Swedish
what they call them?
fish,
Swedish fish.
Mm-hmm.
Let's taste this thing. I could get some honey off that nose and the vanillas again and stuff. Most people say that just that typical bourbon whale, but I think that candied redfish or the Swedish fish is a different note. That's my note. So
it coats your tongue, but it makes it your mouth water almost with it.
Oh yeah, it does.
Yeah, it does. And you just want to have another drink.
Well, it just beckons to you to say, please, just have another sip. Just a little bit more. Yeah. Now, this is a by the fire, and people would think it doesn't get cold up here in Texas, right?
It definitely gets cold up here.
Now, what's your lowest temperatures and
During the winter, like December, January, February, we're typically, at night it'll get below freezing, and then during the day we're generally in the 40s. So it's not freezing, but it ain't warm that's for sure.
Sometimes we get the humidity's up, and whenever you have a higher humidity, even if it's warmer, it's cold. So everything's a little bit relative with that.
what's your the hottest?
Hot. It depends on the year. We had one year where it was like 100 straight days above 100 where it never got below. But
only once.
Yeah, but typically, like this year, we've only had one day that got 100, and the rest of it, and only a handful in the 90s even. So we've been mostly in the 80s this year.
It's only June 20th. It was only summer last weekend, Robert.
Yeah. So we haven't had the hot days yet. But it's been a fairly mild year so far, overall.
August and September will heat up pretty good. But we have, we're not doing, in our warehouse, we do not do temperature control, but the building is really well insulated. So even when it's really hot, it'll get into the mid 90s or something
in the warehouse.
Warehouse, but it really, even when it doesn't go below, and then it'll cool off into the 70s easily in the evenings, and so we get a really nice fluctuation of 20 degrees easily, almost daily, even in the summer. Mm-hmm. And
I noticed you did have some louvers in there too. That
we do
will open it up and let it breathe a little bit.
Yeah, we do. I like airflow. Again, especially if you go back when the humidity's up and it starts feeling a little stuffy, we'll open up the doors and let it breathe a little bit.
It was a boat dealership. We've got 6 great big doors.
So, when you say craft distillery, you guys are true craft. So you got how many barrels stored inside there right now?
I think we're closing in right now. I think we have about 700 back there.
Yes, 760 on the last one out there.
And now you guys decided, hey, we're going to get a little bit bigger. We're going to have a place to put more whiskey.
Yeah, we keep getting yelled at for not having enough whiskey right now. So we've been working on another warehouse that can hold another about 2,000 barrels. So the goal is to get up to about 3,000 barrels. But as you and I were talking about earlier, that just on the way that we manage our barrels, that I don't know how much larger beyond 3,000 we can go, just because we do take a very individual approach to each cask, and my liver can only take so much at the end of the day. So
that's why you got to have a master taster.
That's right.
Maybe you need to bring
Peggy back.
Bring Big Chief back to Texas.
We're tasting through 300 barrels today. Let's go.
So whenever you're deciding, hey, let's bring out a new product, we're going to do something different. What's on the scope for the future for Ironroot?
So this year there's a number of barrel finish things that we're doing. We've got a couple different ways that we do single barrels, and again, we've got a new one that my brother's rolling out. So one of our single barrel programs we call the Evolution Barrel, which is where we have a group, they'll pick a barrel, and we'll actually only pull about a quarter out of that barrel at a time. And so the first quarter will come out, we'll bottle it. The rest of the whiskey never gets pulled out of the barrel. It stays in there, and it will continue aging. And about 6 months later, we'll pull another quarter out of the barrel and let the rest of the whiskey continue aging. And we'll do that until the barrel is empty. And so you get to see kind of how the barrel ages over a couple of years, because one of my big things is I want to show people kind of what we experience here at the distillery, which I think watching whiskey age is one of the most fun things. Is how did that barrel taste when it was 2 versus 3 versus 4 years old? How did it mature? What is maturation really doing to that whiskey? And so he's doing the same thing with the barrel finishes.
We do that specifically with a restaurant. We like, and we only will do one in a certain area where it's not something we do with everybody. And the reason it's neat to do it with our restaurants is the fact that they embrace it so much. And then at the end of it, they'll feature cocktails, but at the end, they will have a dinner. And they'll use our different corn to make different portions of the meal, and then they will take it and let people taste and have a flight of their barrel through the ages of it, and so that has been a really fun experience for us and for our restaurants.
Yeah. So Jonathan's developed a new thing that we're going to be releasing this year, where also he wanted to take the same whiskey and show people what different finishes the exact same whiskey would do. And so we've taken a barrel of whiskey and divided it up amongst 2 or 3 different casks. And so you're going to be able to have the original barrel bourbon as is, and then as it is with different finishes on it. So what is that same whiskey like with a cognac finish or with Armagnac or Madeira or whatever? And so I think that's kind of a really fun thing that you can really see how these impacted and how much the finishing casks really impact the overall flavor.
And that's a revolution barrel as opposed to an evolution barrel.
Yeah.
So this whiskey, the more I drink it, the more I'm falling in love with it. It's really good. Maybe it's because we're in the second half already.
It's barrel 199. It was really good.
So I'm getting almost some hot pepper jelly on that. Or my wife had bought me some jalapeno infused honey.
Mm-hmm.
And I get that honey and that spice together. And, I love that sweet spiciness.
Yeah. Kind of that candied jalapeno.
Yeah. You can't get nothing better, right?
Nah.
So what's the second pour you got?
Second pour we got going. So now you've had purple corn. Now we're going to do bloody butcher corn. So again, as we said, that's part of our 4 core mash bills. So we always like to isolate them because again, when we're doing blending, our philosophy, rather than trying to create something that's uniform in the warehouse, we want to create the most options. So we want different barrels to be spicy, different ones to be sweet, different ones to be heavily tannic, because most of our work's done on the blending table to get our final standard product is to try to put all those components in balance. And when we're putting a blend together, because we only do blends of about 30 barrels, if you put a blend together, but it just needs more sweetness or needs more spice or needs more tannin, we can go to individual barrels and add those to the blends in order to shift the blend to where we want it to be. And so we're very much cognizant trying to keep things very separate and kind of push things in different directions. And so that's why we do all the different corns separately. But I think it's really cool to see what is purple corn versus what is bloody butcher, because I think that's part of the journey that we've gone on through exploration, was trying to find what these different corns, how would they impact whiskey? Because that's, not something that was this small guys are the ones who really started experimenting with this. And you've seen Buffalo Trace start doing some experimentation with it, and so, as well as some of the other guys with like the amaranth and some of the other heirloom grains. And so to me, it's really, really interesting to see them on an individual level as well as the blend.
I got to say, this, out of all the bottles that you put out for us to sample today, this is actually the darkest out of all of them. And we got Jeff the Creed right down the road from us and stuff, and they were using Bloody Butcher. And I've heard some other people say, we're the only people in America doing this. And it's hard to say you're the only person doing something in America.
Even when I think we started, Bloody Butcher was our first.
Yeah.
It's actually in our moonshine.
Yeah.
That was our clear spirit. So we've been doing Bloody Butcher the longest.
Using it first, and then
somebody else had it. But I grew the first Bloody Butcher corn for us at home in Illinois. We have some acreage in order for us to try it out, and then we had it for a while from the Amish country, and now it's actually grown right over here in Denton locally for us. And each one of them is a little bit different in the corn. So even when you do Bloody Butcher, it's going to depend where it goes. It's got, where it's grown reflects its flavor just as much as a lot of things.
So I think, and that was one of the big inspirations for us early on. You saw Jephthah doing Bloody Butcher. You saw the guys doing Jimmy Red out in South Carolina. I think it's High Wire. There you saw Wiggle up in the Northeast was doing a lot of experimentation.
Yeah.
And then the first time that I tasted something made with a different type of corn was Balcones. And
did you say Wiggle?
Wiggle, yeah.
I knew I was right. Jim, did you hear that? Wiggle.
Yeah.
He said it's Weigel.
Oh, it could be.
I'm hoping me and you're right.
Okay, we should be right. And then Balcones with their blue corn. I think that was the first time I tasted one that was made with a different. It's a completely different animal, and so that was like, well, if that's what blue corn does, and we see these every bunch of people doing, what else could we find out there that'd be something that's cool, different flavors? And so that was kind of a experimentation train that we've been on. And so every year we distill 2 or 3 new different varietals of corn. Marsha grows. She's actually grown
Did you
some.
see my corn as you came in? The wind got it a bit last night, but it is atomic orange. Now, haven't seen anybody use an atomic orange.
Not yet.
Yeah.
So how much of that did you grow?
Well, it is 6 feet by 60 feet, and it's about 10 inches apart. So we'll see how much we get.
So it's enough to do, basically to grow enough to get an acre
Experiment.
grown next year and for us to experiment a little bit on a small scale.
And so what's an acre of corn? What would that produce?
It depends on the corn. Some you can get quite a bit of bushels of final grain off of, and some of the older corns yield 1 cob on each plant, maybe. And so some of the older corns you can get very, very low bushel yield. So it just
takes a while to develop your seed corn, but when it's $4 for a packet, you can't. You can't make whiskey out of that.
So I've asked another distillery this, and since you seem like you know your dang corn pretty well. So I think Illinois grows a lot of popcorn, like actual popcorn.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering what that would taste like in whiskey.
So the biggest issue with using like flint corns and popcorn is that because they're so high in protein, the yield is super low. So we do use a flint corn for part of one of our mash bills. The flint corn that we're
the one you just had a minute ago, Promethean,
has a lot of that flint corn on it. You know, it does. They've got tons of flavor, and I think that's really fun. But the yield is, again, I think when I was talking with a friend up in Oklahoma that did 100% mash bill with one of the flint corns, he was getting something like 20% of the yield that he typically got.
The juice isn't worth the squeeze.
Yeah, at least to him, the cost starts jumping up because you're already paying more for the heirloom corn or for the flint corn, and it's the yield is significantly lower. But I don't know.
That's a better explanation I got this time. So I'm, at least I know that it's possible, but it's probably not financially feasible.
I have people that keep talking to us about trying to do one like that. And I was like, but that'd be like a $200 bottle of whiskey. And they're like, yeah, that'd be so cool. I'm like, no, I don't think so.
So like your last name, I'm getting a lot of black licorice in the nose on this.
And now you have jumped yourself up to 131 proof.
Yeah,
right? One thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's 131 proof. That's
definitely a big boy whiskey right here. Or big lady, big woman whiskey, I guess.
Big flavored whiskey.
Big flavored whiskey. Well, let's sample this thing. Man, that's rich.
Mm-hmm.
Just coat your mouth with just so many oils and very buttery.
Yeah, and a lot of those nice oils because we are a pot still distillation and non-chill filtered.
So you're asking me about the Swan Neck off the still.
Was you surprised I know what it was called?
I was very impressed. Hey,
I was actually going to ask you what the degree on the neck itself is.
45 degrees. Huh. So it's a sharp downward angle.
Yeah. I've talked to other distilleries about the angle of that and how important it is, the angle of that neck, and how if you adjusted it just a little bit, how much different your
distillate is.
Distillate is, yeah.
Yeah, the line arm, because that's where when the condensation changes, it doesn't travel; it goes straight down. Huh?
When you hit the top of when you hit the top of the still, anything that condenses up there is coming through the condenser. It's not going to fall back in the pot. So the reflux is how much reflux falls back to the pot. Obviously, is zero when you have a downward angle. Where you see especially some of the scotches, some of the Highland scotches, they'll tend to have more of an upward angle. So it'll condense and come back to the pot. So it'll have a higher reflux rate than it will off a still like that.
Well, it's nice to see that you're using a sweet mash and not a sour mash and doing something not a whole lot of people out there are doing. I think there's more and more and more we're seeing distilleries go into a sweet mash and not that sour mash. And
breweries can do it. Why can't we? Right?
Yeah. I mean, it takes a little bit more work and it costs a little bit more, but I think you get a better product in the end.
I really like it. I think there's certain notes that to me, you can sacrifice some of the ester production that you can get off of doing the sour mashing with sweet mash. But I do think there's a lot of really great flavors that come from sweet mash. And so, again, it's one of those things that saying with whether one or the other's better. is tough, but at least to me, it's something that you get a lot of richness and something that's very different than you typically see.
This right here, this is some phenomenal juice. I would put this right up there with Logic Craig Barrel Proof.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's
high praise.
That's high praise.
I think it is. It's just so much complexity in there. That caramels are coming through, that toffee's coming through to me, that some rich worn leather. When you tell people that, but I do get some of that. And the oak is coming through on that a little bit too. Not very much, but it's there. And it's a dark, beautiful whiskey.
That's a 32-month-old.
And which one of these? You said somebody special picked one of these bottles.
So this is YouTube. A lot of the YouTubers come down to Texas every year for the Whiskey Tribe's what they call the Bastards Ball.
Crowded Barrel.
Yeah. And so when they all got together, one of them asked if they could do a barrel pick while they're there. So we brought a bunch of barrels for them to sample, and this is the one that they selected.
So this is the YouTube barrel.
And Jason from the Mash and Drum.
Yeah. He's one of the guys.
He's the one that picked this. So Jason, that's a great pick, man. I think it's definitely delicious. It's too bad Jim's not here with me to try this. I love it.
And this is Bloody Butcher Corn and Wave Save.
Yeah. It's American oak right here.
So working together as a family, there's not very many people. And I kind of picked up on something you said when Marsha, as you walked outside and you said, "Hey, I've got my granddaughter here and I'm going to try to get her to do some labeling today." And you were like,
yeah, she's 8 years old. Did I say that?
You're like, one of these days she's me running this place. Is that your guys' concept, that this will always be a family owned and run distillery?
It's always going to be a family run distillery. I think part of the heart and soul of Ironroot is us, and if we were gone, I don't know if it would be the same. I think that also when you start looking at the way people blend, every time big distillery or big or small, they switch over who's the one that's doing the blending, and there is a shift in the way that the whiskey is going to come out and the way it expresses itself. So I think no matter what, in order for it to stay the way it is, you have to have the family here. Besides, Marsha's the one who keeps us all online. I don't know if she was gone, it'd be the same around here.
Now, how did you get the nickname Mother of Texas Bourbon?
We were over in Houston, and we were at Reserve 101 with Mike Raymond. Mm-hmm. And we were talking, about the distillery and everything we were doing. And we'd met him a number of years earlier when, I think at Tales of the Cocktail, when we were everybody had aged whiskey at the tasting and we had moonshine, right? And then he followed us through and we were down there talking, and that's what he called me that at one point. And then it kind of just started sticking. Other people would pick it up, and
Dan Garrison started calling you Mother of Texas Whiskey, and once he did, I think it was like, all right, that's actually her nickname now.
And Jared from Balcones, and it's because Roberts and Jonathan say I mother them all to death, because we all, as you say,
even Jared, she mothers.
Yeah, he's such a sweetheart, isn't he? I think that everybody's so close, and there's such an age difference between myself and most of the distillers. So, and if they can't remember your name, it's easy to call you Mom, right?
Well, that would be true and stuff. Me and you might be around the same age. So I still think that's cool that they have that. To me, that is just a show of respect, of the respect they have for Ironroot and they have for you, Marsha. That
I appreciate that.
I'm just super impressed sitting down with you and listening to you tell me about the whiskeys and stuff here. I really didn't know a whole lot about Ironroot until today. I looked up a little bit and did a little research, and I knew you guys were a family distillery. And I talked to Robert a couple times, but to hear your knowledge of whiskey, and how much I can hear the love for it in your voice, and hearing you talk about growing corn and how you want to see this grow, and then you want to see your granddaughter get into it, and the pride that you have in your two boys. I just, I think that's an awesome thing.
Thank you.
It's just, to me, it's amazing. And that keeps that bourbon culture, that whiskey culture going, or people like you.
Well, even if you look back to your Kentucky, those are old family. They're all, related. And, that's how the bourbon community, I think, has grown up forever.
Someone's got a mama, right?
I've had people tell me that, they're not related. But when you really do look at it, there were just a couple of gentlemen that started distilleries in Kentucky, and those families kind of morphed out into all kinds of stuff. You have W.L. Weller, and he really is the grandfather, granddaddy, or whatever you want to call him, the OG of wheated whiskey. There would be no Maker's Mark without him. There would be no Pappy Van Winkle without him, because he's the guy that said, let me take some wheat and put it in whiskey and see how it tastes. Guys like Elijah Craig and JTS Brown. There would be no Brown Foreman without JTS Brown, I don't think. There would be no Wild Turkey. Those distilleries just wouldn't be there today. So
there's the family you're born into, and the family that you grow and develop with, and I think that can be a combination of both.
That's definitely so true. I think me and Jim are always, we always feel like we're family when somebody invites us into the distillery and says, hey, let us share our whiskey with you. And we're always so honored that you open up your doors. And today you brought me in here, not only me, but I brought my son along with me and said, bring him on. And we went back in your warehouse and, you thieved some whiskey for us and let us taste some pretty special barrels back there. I was trying to carry one out with me.
But we have those big 63s. Now you just can't do those, right?
I don't know. I
could try.
I can give it the old college try, right? I'm a big fella. I might be able to get one of them things. I can roll it around for sure. I don't know how to get it off that top shelf, but I'll figure a way out.
Just get up there and kick, right?
So you got one other expression for us to try today.
One other one. So this one is going to be off the beaten path with this one. This whiskey is kind of a fun special whiskey for us because this is one that we did with one of our mentors, Nancy Fraley. We developed it with her over drinking lots of very old Armagnac with another type of brandy.
One day at her house.
Yeah. So her and my brother decided that corn whiskey, and again, Marsh doesn't like when I say this, but I call it it's the redheaded stepchild of the whiskey world. It's the least respected category. So what would happen if we took corn whiskey and we treated it like Scotch, which, the most revered of all the whiskey styles, I guess, if you would. And so we took corn whiskey and we aged it in port barrels, and the other part was in old Scotch barrels from Islay. So it's got this smoky peatiness that you're going to get from the Scotch barrels, and then it's also got that port cask influence, but the richness of a corn whiskey. So it's Ironroot's ode to Scotland a little bit, but it's kind of a fun little whiskey.
And it's going to go back to your purple mash bill. And the reason why we chose it was because it's the basis of our hubris, which is the corn whiskey, which was our first whiskey that was recognized at a young age, and it won the best corn whiskey in the world a couple of times. And so Jonathan, this was his popper that he treated like a prince. And so when we started with hubris, the name Icarus develops from it because we took hubris, who got so full of himself that he flew a little too close to the sun and became Icarus.
That's a good tie-in, right?
Yeah. So the joke is he's a little smoky because he got burnt by the sun when he was a little too close to him. So it's going to be a little bit of peat character that's all from cask influence as well as the port.
So if people are coming to Denison, what else is there to do up in Denison?
So we've got, again, you've got you've got 903 Brewers down in Sherman that's really well known for their slushy beers, which is kind of like a mixture between a health drink and beer, if you will. It's got a lot of fruit in it. It's a kind of a cool style of beer. You've got one of the largest vineyards in the state, is about 5 miles from the distillery. It was planted in the 80s, so it's a bunch of old growth vines called Hidden Hanger. It's out there. It's absolutely gorgeous. You've got Eisenhower's birthplace is here in Denison, so you can go visit old Ike's place. And then you've got Lake Texoma, here. That's the largest lake in the state. It's huge
You can
lake.
put yachts on it.
Yeah, it's striper fishing out there is phenomenal. So if
Mom,
you're,
I'll tell you a story about that lake.
oh well,
It can be told on there, though.
And we have a really nice downtown, and Denison is just beginning to flourish again downtown. And we've got some nice little restaurants that are starting up. They're even redoing the old hotel that was, it's being refurbished and started. So there is so much growth and excitement going to be coming to Denison. We've got a number of new restaurants. And so,
and if you get a wild hair, the casino ain't too far from here either.
yeah,
so.
we're only 8 miles from
So
Choctaw.
there's a lot to do to come up here. If you're
Yeah.
going to say, hey, I'm in Denison, stop by the distillery. They're right off
75.
75,
Yeah.
exit 67.
Mhm.
Yep.
Come in here. They're not doing tours right now, but
Starting in July, end of July,
End of
we'll start
July,
doing
August.
tours
you'll
again.
come back for tours and come in here and buy some whiskey for them for sure. So this expression, I'm nosing a little bit. It's got that, I don't know, that something a little bit different there.
There you go to the port.
It's the port and the peat is what's going to be coming through on the nose. So it's, again, peat has this crazy flavor profile. They talk about like medicinal, where it's like get a little bit of iodine, saltiness, a little bit of smoke, but it's not wood smoke. So it's not quite barbecue, but it's got almost, again, medicinal. Again, the
But
Scotch.
yet the port comes through with the sweetness with
I
it.
could
It's
smell the
tremendous
sweetness coming out there, almost like a floral, like some roses or something.
Oh, yeah.
Or cotton candy.
Cotton candy.
It's an old tawny port barrel.
It is an old tawny port barrel.
It was originally filled in 1969
Wow.
and was dumped in 2016. So yeah, it was old vintage port cask.
So I used to think tawny meant old dirty woman.
I mean, it could. I don't know.
Because it depends on your reference points.
All right, let's taste this thing.
And I think this is at a nice 107.2.
Yeah.
I can get that smokiness and a little bit of just
you
a little
breathe
bit
out.
of peat coming
Mhm.
out.
Yeah, we wanted to go. It's a milder on the peat, and again, that's where the port cask kind of helps. So if you're not a Lefroy fan or one of those Ardbeg or one of those really big peat, this isn't that level of peat. It's going to be much lighter peat profile.
But that tawny port barrel is just coming through on this. That sweetness, it's just like it. I've actually drank some of my wife's. She loves hummingbirds.
Mm-hmm.
She loves feeding them suckers. And before she went to cooking her own sugar water for them, she'd buy the concentrate stuff. I was like, I want to see what this tastes like. So it says not for human consumption, but hey, whatever.
It's sugar
It's
water.
because they put all the red in it, right?
Yeah. So I drank a little bit, and it is super flavorful.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted I could taste that on there.
Mm-hmm.
Just that kind of cooked sugar water a little bit, not honeyish so much, but I can definitely get that ports coming through too. And that just coats the mouth.
It's a thick whiskey for sure.
And I think that with some of the peats, you get some of that sweetness with it, and so it's not like the campfire style of the smoke. It really pulls up that sweetness of that type of the peat finish.
Yeah, whenever I think of smoke and stuff, there's different styles of smoking. If you got a peat smokiness, but when I think of barbecue smoke, I think of fruit wood. But I'm from the hill country, so we used down there. We used a lot of pecan to smoke stuff with, and I can get that pecan smoke is more of a sweeter smoke. Where hickory or mesquite's gonna be that more rough and ragged kind of smoke. But this is more of a fruit wood, like an apple wood or a peach wood or something like that.
Lighter, sweeter smoke
Yep.
profile for sure.
Definitely another great expression. I don't know if you picked all these 6 barrels and said, damn, we're going to impress this guy, but 6 great whiskeys that you've put out in front of me today.
Icarus came out about 2 weeks ago, and it's primarily a distillery. It'll go out to a few stores.
Yeah, mainly we do it for here for
only
us.
once a year, though. And so,
You guys just had a release on Saturday and sold out, you said, before 2 hours before you even
Open the doors.
opened the doors.
Yeah, with the COVID stuff, normally we'd have a line and we'd do fun stuff out with people on the line. But with COVID, we were just, when people were showing up, we were giving them tickets, go, hey, go get breakfast, drink coffee, show up anytime between when we're open and come pick up your bottle. But if you're the first 60 people here on that, we were giving out tickets. But typically when we do releases, we try to have like 300 something or something bottles here of whatever we're releasing. This one we did not, just because we're trying to get it more into market, because the stores have been dry for quite a while now. So we're trying to make sure we got more whiskey to them.
That's what we're working on today. We better get out there and get going.
Labeling whiskey.
Labeling and bottling whiskey
ready,
today.
1:15.
We might just have to take a couple bottles with us to back to Kentucky and share them with our listeners, because we'd love to do that. Some of our listeners that are very passionate about whiskey, sometimes we'll send some samples out to them that we've had on the show that they might not be able to get their hands on, and that we'll drink it along with them. And I think they like that we're going to share some whiskey with them that we've picked up and that other people can't get their hands on. I just think our bourbon culture is that way, where people are sharing knowledge and
sharing whiskey.
That's what it's about.
I'm not a bourbon expert. Like I say all the time, I'm just a bourbon bullshitter. So where can our listeners find you guys on social media? On social media, you're going to find us at Ironroot Republic or Ironroot Whiskey. So on Facebook, you type in Ironroot, we're going to pop up. On Instagram and Twitter, it's Ironroot Whiskey. That's the best kind of place to find us. Page, ironrootrepublic.com
on the website.
And that's where you sign up for tours. And we also have sales, and you can buy bottles online. You can buy bottles online, but you have to pick them up at the distillery. But you have we'll give you a year. So if you're from out of the Texas area and you say, gee, I think I can make it down there, but I really want this release. Once you've purchased it, we will hold it for a year for you. So, that gives an opportunity for you if you think you're going to have a chance to come on down.
Come and visit.
She's trying to get that Texas twang coming out a little bit there.
You always get a little bit when you live here,
Yeah.
It's like y'all or all y'all. You got to know the difference between your singulars and plurals right here.
So, Rob and Marcia, I just from the bottom of my heart, thank you for letting us come into your distillery.
Thank you for driving all the way to come over here.
Appreciate it. Love not a short drive. You and bringing your son.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing your whiskey with us and your knowledge of whiskey and your guys' take on Texas whiskey.
It's a great place to be.
I think you guys are just putting the whoop ass down on people with this whiskey. I love it. And if somebody else sells different wise, say you go see Big Chief.
Appreciate that.
So you can find the Bourbon Road on Instagram and on Facebook at the Bourbon Road. You can go to our website, thebourbonroad.com, where you can find our blogs about our episodes. You can find stuff about me and Jim on there. You can also order our Glencairns, the Bourbon Road Glencairn on there. Also on Facebook, go into our Facebook group. We have a private group on there called the Bourbon Roadies. Go in there. We have distillers in there and part of that group. We have master tasters. We have whiskey experts, historians. Go in there, show us what you're drinking, take photos and show us what your Bourbon Road is. We'd love to see that. And I'm sure everyone else would too. And we'll see you on down the Bourbon Road.
We do appreciate all of our listeners, and we'd like to thank you for taking time out of your day to hang out with us here on the Bourbon Road. We hope you enjoyed today's show, and if so, we would appreciate if you'd subscribe and rate us a 5-star with a review on iTunes. Make sure you follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at the Bourbon Road. That way you'll be kept in the loop on all the Bourbon Road happenings. You can also visit our website at thebourbonroad.com to read our blog, listen to the show, or reach out to us directly. We always welcome comments or suggestions, and if you have an idea for a particular guest or topic, be sure to let us know. And again, thanks for hanging out with us.